Welcome to the Underline This podcast, the podcast where we unpack the big ideas hiding in the margins. Because the best parts, they're between the lines. Of all the books I've reviewed, this is the one that's changed the most lives. It inspires people to grow, overcome failure, crush fear, and seek out adventure. Today we're going to look at The Alchemist. We're going to give you a summary of the book, talk about the author, key themes, symbolism, and of course, my takeaways. Let's start with talking about the plot of The Alchemist. The Alchemist was released in 1988 by Brazilian author Paulo Coelho, and our protagonist is named Santiago, a young Spaniard, an Andalusian, which is a region of Spain, who's a shepherd and dreams of finding treasure near the Egyptian pyramids. And he has this dream over and over again, and because of that, he's motivated to leave his simple life and embark on a journey of self-discovery. Along the way, Santiago meets several key figures who are very influential in his development on his journey. The first is Melchizedek, the king of Salem. Melchizedek teaches Santiago about his personal legend, which you could equate a personal legend to one's life's true purpose. The next key figure is the Englishman, who studies alchemy in search of the philosopher's stone. Probably heard about that before. It's also referred to as the sorcerer's stone, such as Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. And then there's the alchemist, a mysterious desert sage who teaches Santiago how to listen to his heart and understand the language of the world. Ultimately, Santiago discovers that the treasure he was looking for is actually buried back where his journey began, under a sycamore tree near his old church, symbolizing that true wisdom is found within and throughout the journey itself. So that's a very, very high level overview of the plot. Now we're going to talk about Paulo Coelho. So Paulo Coelho, as I mentioned before, is a Brazilian author. He was born in 1947 in Rio de Janeiro. And before becoming a novelist, he worked as a lyricist, theater director, and a journalist. So definitely someone who has a lot of creative talents, which to me makes sense because this is a very creative book and there's a lot of symbolism. In his writing, Coelho was known for blending spirituality, mysticism, and philosophy in a way that is accessible, and he taught these principles in his writing through storytelling. And The Alchemist was really, in the beginning, a commercial failure, in Brazil at least, selling fewer than 1,000 copies, and before republishing and being translated, it was marked as a commercial failure, but once it had been translated, it had sold over 65 million copies worldwide and actually holds a Guinness World Record for the most translated book by a living author. Now for the themes and symbolism. First, starting out with personal legend. Everyone has a destiny, their life's calling, and fulfillment comes from pursuing it wholeheartedly. I absolutely agree with that. I think in the real world, you see that often. For example, have you ever seen someone who is a true master at their craft? An example of this for me would be Gims, who's a French rapper. There's actually an excellent documentary on Netflix about him. When my wife and I went to go see him perform, you could see that this is someone who is passionate. They love what they do. And you could see that when he was on the stage, performing, dancing, connecting with the crowd, it was almost like he just tapped into his second nature, that he had found his life's calling. I do believe that everyone has a personal legend, and that could be in pursuit of finding what your life's calling is, whether it's going from job to job, career to career, passion to passion, to do some sleuthing and finding out what it is that you're good at, or what is it that makes you tick, what makes you happy. In addition to just finding your life's calling, I think that when it comes to personal legend, if you view your life as being something legendary, I think that is a fun, creative way to look at what can I do in order to make my life more interesting, more exciting. For example, myself. Again, I'm not that, I don't like to use myself as an example. I'm not trying to put myself on a pedestal, but once in a while, I think that it's fun to go on a running adventure. I enjoy running. Of course, I can run in my backyard. I can run around the city, but some of my favorite trails to go do are the ones that you have to be a little crazy to do it. I guess I'm admitting I'm a little crazy, but for example, I live about 45 minutes away from the Everglades, and one of my favorite trails is Shark Valley, which weaves in and out, which is why it has the name Shark Valley, because the trail moves like a shark. And it's 7.5 miles into the Everglades through swamp and on a paved trail before you get to an observation deck. But as you go along that trail, there are countless alligators. I actually did try counting one time. I reached 50 alligators, and then I just gave up and thought, there's too many. I've proven to myself that there's a lot. I like to go on that trail because it's a reminder of just the little adventures that you can go have. Makes me a little uncomfortable running so close to alligators, but it's fun. There's a little bit of an edge there. And I think that's something that's just an example that one can use when developing their personal legend. Maybe it's going on a fun run. Maybe it's going and pursuing a hobby that you've always wanted to try out, but you just haven't had the time. Or maybe it's doing something that terrifies you. For example, it could be maybe doing jujitsu or taking a boxing class, or maybe even running a long race. I think we've beaten personal legend to death here. Let's go to the journey versus the destination. This is going to sound a little cliche, but it is one of those life lessons that I think is important to understand. And that is that the process of growth and self-discovery is much more valuable than the material journey. So again, it's not about the destination. It's about the journey. You see that a lot in movies and books. You hear people quote that, but it's absolutely true. For me, I had an experience where I was preparing for a marathon and an ultra marathon. While it was a lot of fun getting to that point where I could run those races, I actually really enjoyed the build up to it, seeing that personal growth, finding ways to stay motivated, learning about what my body can take, what I need to do to improve my nutrition. It's almost like the development really does happen in between, and those are where the experiences come in. Of course, the destination, and there's different cases of what the journey is versus the ultimate conclusion of what that journey might be. And the next one is the soul of the world versus universal language. So spiritual unity connects all people and nature. By listening closely, we can understand life's deeper truths. I absolutely agree with that, because a lot of what we learn in life comes down to how much we're paying attention, how much we're actually putting in effort to learn something new. It could be in a relationship. And when I say relationship, I'm talking about platonic, romantic. When your ears are open, your eyes are open, you can learn from those around you. Maybe they say something, or maybe they're doing something with their actions that inspires you, or maybe it even scares you, so that you know that that's something that you don't want to do. At times, maybe we even need to take a moment to reflect, to pause, to cancel out all the noise and just be alone with our thoughts, to digest maybe what's going on in our lives. For example, I like to meditate in the mornings. When I do that, I've got an agenda, a meditation agenda that I always go through. And to me, the reason why I've stuck with this agenda as long as I have it is because it helps me take the time to kind of put a pause button on everything going on and to remember all the good things that are happening, as well as looking for ways to improve what I'm doing. And when we do that, we become more aware. We can have a spiritual experience, and we can understand deeper truths. Next, dreams and omens. Now, within the book, dreams and omens act as messages from the divine. Omens guide those willing to see them. And in the real world, I think this goes back to what I was saying before, which is, are your ears and eyes open to what's going on around you? Sometimes you may not realize that maybe there's a lesson to be found. And I think that when it comes to omens, real world application here isn't necessarily, drinking tea and looking at the tea leaves and seeing, oh, do I see the grim? No, not at all. It's being able to go into a situation, being able to reflect and read the events and the things that are going on around you. It's also reading the emotions that you might be experiencing, or maybe even thoughts, and trying to validate what is going on or try to make sense of them. That to me is an omen. As far as dreams being something that can be a representation of something that you're pursuing, I think there's a lot of truth in that, actually. I don't necessarily think that there's symbolism in dreams. I think it's really just your raw self-consciousness that is manifesting itself, or maybe at times it's just completely random. Next, alchemy. This is a concept I love. Alchemy in the book symbolizes transformation, not just of metals, but of the self, turning the ordinary life into something extraordinary. I love this concept because it falls in line with a lot of sayings and I think just truths in life, which is that when you take a situation, or such as maybe an ordinary life, there are lots of opportunities to add some spice to it, to make it better, even if it's a difficult situation. Look at a failure as something that you can learn from. Look at something difficult as an adventure or a growth opportunity. Remember, you can't make lemonade unless you have lemons, and you can't have any diamonds without pressure. You've probably heard that expression, no pressure, no diamonds. I think it's absolutely true. We've all got the power to become an alchemist, to be someone who can make the best out of any situation. Bringing this back to my life, my wife and I, we moved from Utah out to Miami, which is a very, very big move. And it has a lot of, there's a lot of differences between Miami and Utah. For those of you that have been to Utah, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's very conservative, very quiet. And Miami is the complete opposite. It's an international city. There's a lot going on. And it comes with a lot of the benefits, perks, as well as downsides of a big city. Leading up to our big move, I had a bit of a negative mindset around it. I couldn't imagine leaving my family and familiarity and comfort and the mountains and the four seasons to go to somewhere that I really felt like I didn't know very well. And I remember I was talking to a friend who actually referenced The Alchemist and said that, "You're going, right?" And I said, "Yeah, we're planning on going." And their response back to me was, "Well, you're familiar with the book, The Alchemist. Maybe you need to be like The Alchemist and make the best of the situation and not have such a gloomy outlook on it." And just that reminder was life-changing to me, because when we got out here, it became more real. I began to look for opportunities and ways to make it a very positive move. I've discovered the Everglades. I discovered Brickell, Key Biscayne, the beach, all the international, all the different international scenes, going to Little Havana and meeting Cubans for the first time. I sound like Samwise Gamgee meeting elves for the first time when I say that, kind of a little odd. But again, Utah is not a very diverse place. And I found that reminder from The Alchemist was very beneficial on having a better mindset when we go into a new experience, or if we're traveling or essentially we're encountering something new. All right, let's talk about symbolism. First, the desert. The desert in The Alchemist represents a place of trial, stripping away the non-essential and representing inner struggle. I like to think of the desert in The Alchemist almost like a symbolic baptism, where you're removed from everything, you're stripped of everything, and you're starting anew. And it's almost like a reset button. And that is what Santiago is going through. He doesn't have his non-essentials. He just has what he needs to survive. And he's really putting himself in a situation where he's going to have to perish in the desert, or he's going to have to traverse. And traverse he does. Next, we got the Philosopher's Stone and Elixir of Life. This represents human desire for perfection, but also spiritual enlightenment. So if you're not familiar with the Philosopher's Stone, which you should be if you're anyone that's read Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, British version, of course, called the Philosopher's Stone, so enchanté. With the Philosopher's Stone, the whole concept of this is that the Philosopher's Stone was a stone that was used to help the user turn metal into gold. And in the symbolic context here, it represents taking any situation and making it gold, putting it towards your benefit. And that's exactly what's going on here, is that within the Alchemist, this is the desire for spiritual enlightenment, to see the world and to become inspired, but also to seek treasure. And it's through that journey of pushing through challenges, crossing the desert, meeting different people, having to work in order to get from point A to point B, that Santiago realizes that he gained more on the journey, and that the treasure that he's looking for is actually back home. Next, we have Santiago's sheep, because he's a shepherd. These sheep represent comfort, everyday routine, and ignorance of one's greater purpose. This is very relatable to me in that it's so easy just to wake up and kind of do the same thing every day and just live comfortably. For me, I wake up, I go exercise, I make breakfast, I say goodbye to my wife while she goes to work. I then work from home for the rest of the day. She comes back, we exercise, we eat, we go back, and then we live for the weekend. It's very easy and it's very appealing, I think, for people to stay comfortable in their routines and to go with where they feel comfortable, stay where it's safe. But something that I've learned and been very grateful for is that there are little moments where I have to remind myself that when you're in a situation, what can you do to make this better than it already is? And going back to the Miami example, meeting new people is something that I always try and take advantage of, because there's not a lot of opportunities when you work remote to meet new people. So when we go to a running club, when we get together with friends and there's unfamiliar faces, I try and be the confident one and go up and introduce myself and go make some new friends. And that's just one example. I think within the context of The Alchemist, traveling, right, going on adventures, it's important to seek out adventure. And it could be a little one, it could be a big one. It could be something as simple as, hey, let's go explore this side of the city. Or maybe I'm going to go run this race. Or maybe it's actually doing something that kind of terrifies you, like, hey, why don't we go to Australia? I've never been. I'm just thinking of somewhere that's far and distant. Or maybe going somewhere that's completely new to you, new culture, new language, and trying to make plans to figure out a way to get there and be able to experience something new. All right, last symbol here is the treasure, both literal wealth and the metaphorical realization of one's true self. If you've heard the quote from the Bible, there is a famous scripture that says, where your heart is, also, oh man, I'm already butchering this. where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. I think that's what it is, paraphrasing. There's a lot of different kinds of wealth out there. And there's a book that came out recently. This will show you when I'm recording this, is The Wealth We Cannot See by Robin Sharma. And he talks about all the different kinds of wealth that isn't necessarily monetary or even something that you can be quantified. It's the wealth that people can't take away from you. It's experience that you can't necessarily just buy. For example, for me, some of my favorite moments are watching a sunset in the Everglades, or like I mentioned before, running on that trail in Shark Valley and seeing alligators. Yeah, it cost me a parks pass to get in there. But there's little adventures and experience like that and things that I feel just from the moment that you can't purchase. Again, some of my favorite moments are driving in the Everglades, first thing in the morning, seeing the sun come up, drinking my Monster Energy drink, blasting Free Bird and hearing the climactic guitar solo and feeling my heart race and seeing the wildlife all wake up and seeing alligators bob up and down. I think you get the point. I love the Everglades. I love alligators. I guess I never grew out of loving dinosaurs. And so now that a little bit more mature, I'm seeking out the closest thing. But yeah, as far as the treasure, there's the literal wealth, and then there's a metaphorical one, which again is finding one's true self, finding your purpose, finding things that make you happy. All right, next we've got the interesting facts I kind of want to share about The Alchemist. So I always find this is fascinating. One, this is the book that's been translated into the most languages, which equals 80. A lot of famous individuals like Will Smith, Madonna, Pharrell Williams, a lot of other celebrities have all praised The Alchemist as being a life-changing book. I'll add my name to that list. Not a celebrity, but in my eyes, I like to think that I am. And then Paulo Coelho actually wrote the entire novel in just 2 weeks, which to me is insane. And he claimed that he was just channeling the story rather than creating it, which I think goes back to finding your life's purpose. When you find something that you're really good at, that is your calling, it doesn't even feel like work. It just kind of flows through you. Next, despite its spiritual depth, the language is simple. Paulo Coelho believes profound truth should be accessible to all. Another interesting thing is that a film adaptation has been in the works for decades with various big names attached, but has actually never made it to release, which I think is fascinating. Maybe one day. But good luck. I think this is one of those cases where it's going to be very difficult to recreate what you're able to feel, what you're able to learn from the book in a movie. So Godspeed to whoever figures that out. Now for my takeaways. Some of these might feel a little redundant, but these are just my raw thoughts that I put together as I was thinking about what I had just read. So it's kind of like the one bite challenge that Dave Portnoy does. As soon as I finish the book, these are some of the things I wrote down. First, journey is always better than the destination. We mentioned that. It's the experiences around the way. It's the growth that comes. That's much better to seeking out the outcome. For example, if you're looking to get a six-pack, it's not the fact that, hey, look, I got a six-pack now. It's actually the journey along the way of, hey, I learned how to eat better. I learned to be more active. I learned discipline, self-control. And now, because I've done that, I've got myself washboard abs, which is my trophy. Next, experiences improve the soul, not possessions. And I think that is taking the story of The Alchemist and boiling it down to its nuggets, which is that while we may be seeking out physical treasure or seeking out going to this place or doing that, it's the journey along the way, which I know is a little redundant, but I like that thought. Next, transformations are only possible when we get outside of our comfort zones, which is why, personally, I love to travel. I love going and experiencing something new and finding the adventure in it and just doing something difficult. Because I find that doing difficult things really leads to self-improvement, enlightenment, and self-awareness. For me, I mentioned a couple examples before. One that, just bringing this back to traveling, some of my favorite places I like to visit are the ones that are most different. For example, Lima, Peru, Bogota, Colombia, India, Taiwan. These places, I love the spontaneity. I love the chaos of a foreign city. When I say the chaos, I'm not saying that they are the chaos. I'm saying that the chaos that I experience going to a place where maybe I may not speak the language perfectly, but I've got to figure out what's going on. And that's exciting. I love being reminded that there are other people, there are other cultures, there are other things out there that I'm not familiar with. I like being reminded that, hey, you don't have everything figured out together, but here's a moment where you get to prove yourself. Then next, there's some other things that I found from the book, and these are just paraphrased quotes, but one of them is, when you want something deeply, the universe conspires to help you achieve it. There's a great section with The Alchemist where Santiago and The Alchemist are speaking with one another about what it is that they want. And honestly, they're talking about when you can trust your heart, when you should listen to it. And the meaning behind that is just that when you follow your true purpose, it aligns with you, and so do opportunities. I think that we all have our place in the universe. It may not be very clear, but it's up to us to figure that out, to be the alchemist. Booyah. Next, on fear. So the fear of failure is often worse than the failure itself. Which really means that fear holds us back more than real obstacles. There's a great Stoic quote, which is that we suffer more in imagination than we do in reality. And I think that sums up fear completely, which is that And again, I know that there are some cases where that definitely does apply. There's some people that might say, well, what if you're standing at the edge of a cliff? Yes, I know, stupid. But I'm saying in the case where maybe you're reluctant to go do something because you're afraid of what others might think, or you're afraid of maybe things not going exactly planned, or maybe just getting out of your comfort zone. All right, on love. True love never stops someone from pursuing their dream. Instead, it encourages them to fulfill it. Meaning behind this is that love supports growth rather than creating limits. And that is great. I think love is that shot in the arm that a lot of us need. That's why it's so important to have loving people around us, family, friends, mentors, because love is that fuel that helps us to push past our limits. For example, I've heard from many people that once you get married, that's almost like when you mature the most and you're forced to grow, because guess what? You love someone, they love you back. That love is that motivation to help you be the best version of yourself, to look out for that person, to be the best role model for your children, for your community, those around you. But I digress. All right, next, on listening to your heart. So I mentioned this a little bit, but your heart knows your path. So listen carefully, even when it whispers in fear or doubt. It really means that intuition guides us towards our destiny. And I think that's one of those things that you do have to listen to, that kind of still small voice within you that will help guide you as to what's right and what's not, especially for your talents, and your circumstances. Next, on the journey. The treasure we seek is often found along the journey, not just at the destination, which means that growth and self-discovery matter as much as the goal. And then last, kind of paraphrase quote here is about courage. It takes courage to leave comfort behind in pursuit of your dreams. And when I read that, it reminds me of the message behind The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, where you got Bilbo Baggins, who's in his home. He's eating like 12 meals a day. He wants for nothing. Everything is just as he wants it. But he gains so much more by stepping outside of his door and going and pursuing an adventure and getting out of his comfort zone. So I find that The Hobbit's very inspirational. All these books that kind of inspired travel and seeking out experiences are inspirational to me. I love it. So just remember, in closing here, I want to emphasize that we're all the authors of our personal legend. Remember, no pressure, no diamonds. When we go out and we seek experiences, especially the ones that are the most difficult, that's where the most growth happens. And that's what gives us enlightenment and transforms us. To leave you, I want to share one of my favorite quotes from one of my favorite films, The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, starring Ben Stiller. And it comes from Sean O'Connell's letter. So quick recap, if you haven't seen the film, I highly recommend it. When I think of The Alchemist, I'm reminded of this movie because it's about a film developer who is yet to go travel the world. He wants to, and really his window into what's going on is by developing the film of the photographers that go out there, specifically Sean O'Connell, who's someone that doesn't have a cell phone. It's very difficult to get a hold of, but he travels the world and he gets amazing pictures and has these incredible experiences. And when he writes to Walter Mitty to encourage him to travel, he puts in a message, which is life's motto. And that is to see the world, things dangerous to come to see behind walls, draw closer, to find each other and to feel. That is the purpose of life. Thank you very much for joining today. I think this has been the best podcast that I've done. I think I'm getting better. Feel confident that I am, but I'll let you decide in the comments. Thank you for listening to this episode. Please give us a follow on social media and wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you again, everyone. Bye-bye.